الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وآله وأصحابه أجمعين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب هب لي من الصالحين فبشرناه بغلام حليم فلما بلغ معه السعي قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى. قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. If one has to study the life of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam from any angle, then one will find sufficient guidance in the life, family members and household of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. There is no person or individual who cannot relate to the life and the guidance of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam's entire life was an embodiment of guidance from every angle. Now coming to Qurbani, this word Qurbani is derived from the word Qurban in Arabic, which is derived from the word Qurb, which means closeness. And this is the essence of Qurbani, to draw close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this was the spirit of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, the Anbiya alayhim salatu was salam, as well as all the Sahaba ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. So today I intend discussing two incidents from the life of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, highlighting the degree of respect, love and kindness we are to show to our parents, in the manner in which we are to submit before the orders and commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Ibrahim alayhi salam leaves his parents for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a lesson and guidance for us as well as our youth, that when addressing his father, he does so with such love and kindness. Ibrahim alayhi salam's father Azar being an idol merchant, Ibrahim alayhi salam being Khalilullah, the friend of Allah, the tone of the father being aggressive, the tone of Ibrahim alayhi salam being passive, to such an extent that the father of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, Azar, starts threatening his life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this in Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ وَاهْجُرْنِي مَلِيًّا. That Ibrahim alayhi salam's father tells Ibrahim alayhi salam that if you do not stop preaching me, I shall pelt you to death. Even at this juncture, look at the teachings of Islam. On one side, the father is so stern and is opposing the truth. On the other side is Ibrahim alayhi salam, who is inviting his father towards good. Yet even at this juncture, the teachings of Islam is kindness and tenderness towards one's parents. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in a hadith, مَنْ نَظَرَ إِلَىٰ وَالِدَيْهِ نَظْرَ رَحْمَةٍ كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بِكُلِّ نَظْرَةٍ حَجًّا مَبْرُورًا. That whoever looks at his parents with the gaze of love, kindness, mercy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward that person with an accepted Hajj. So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Nabi of Allah, what happens if we have to look at our parents with love 100 times a day? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, there is no shortage in the rewards of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you with 100 accepted Hajj. So Azar, the father of Ibrahim alayhi salam, is threatening his life. But look at the response of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim alayhi salam says, قال سلام عليك سأستغفر لك ربي إنه كان بي حفيا. Oh my father, peace be upon you. Peace be on you. We can relate it to our lives. And what would our response be to aggression from our fathers, our parents? And here the father is on wrong, he's on batil, he's opposing the truth. Yet the response of Ibrahim alayhi salam is, Salamun alayk. Peace be upon you. I shall seek forgiveness from my Rabb on your behalf. My Allah has always been compassionate towards me. Now to further understand the level of obedience a child ought to have for his parents, and the manner in which we are to submit before the commands and orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we look into another incident from the life of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Ibrahim alayhi salam makes dua for his son, and he turns to Allah and he says, Rabbi habli min as-salihin. That, oh my Allah, oh my beloved Allah, bless me with a righteous son. So from this is a lesson for us to learn that we need to be making dua for our children, and more specifically for the piety and righteousness of our children. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam with a child, Ismail alayhi salam. And Ismail alayhi salam now grows up until he reaches the age of running. So the Mufassirin write that it comes in Jalalain that he was either still 7 years old or he was 13 years old. So Ibrahim alayhi salam then sees in a dream that he is now slaughtering his son. Now for us to understand the challenge, the true challenge behind this command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to understand the love that Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam had for his son Ismail alayhi salam. So this love was intense, especially since Ismail alayhi salam at that time was Ibrahim alayhi salam's only child. And also keeping in mind that Ibrahim alayhi salam was making dua for a child for a long time. And when Ibrahim alayhi salam was blessed with Ismail alayhi salam, he was already in his old age, he was 86 years old. So Ibrahim alayhi salam was extremely fond of his son Ismail alayhi salam. And he is at that age where generally parents find their children to be the cutest, most adorable, and the bond between father and son is at its peak. You know, in our circles, we often hear the fathers telling the elderly children, when you were a child, you were so cute. You know, you were such a cute child. And as you grew up, I don't know what happened to you. So, referring to which age? That very age that Ismail alayhi salam finds himself now in this situation, where his father is seeing a dream that he is slaughtering him. So Ibrahim alayhi salam approaches his son. So before that, Ibrahim alayhi salam sees this dream. Now knowing very well that the dreams of the Anbiya alayhi salam is revelation, is wahi. So from the different forms and modes of revelation, you have a direct, non-intermediary, two-way conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that honor was bestowed upon Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on the occasion of Mi'raj, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the command of Salah directly to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That alone emphasizes the importance of Salah. Then you have a different form of revelation, and that is that revelation which is sent to the Anbiya alayhi salam via the medium of Jibreel alayhi salam. And then from the forms of revelation, you also have that of dreams. Now, dreams of the Nabi alayhi salam is revelation, and it is the lightest form of revelation. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving such an apparently challenging command in the lightest form of revelation, which Ibrahim alayhi salam fulfills in the best possible way. The ulama, the scholars mention that if Ibrahim alayhi salam was given the order by Allah to slaughter himself, that would have been easier on Ibrahim alayhi salam than to slaughter his son. Because in slaughtering yourself, the pain would have ended at the time of your demise. However, in the command of sacrificing your son, the pain is there whilst slaughtering and sacrificing your son, and then you're going to have to live with this pain for the rest of your life until your demise. So Ibrahim alayhi salam sees this dream, and he approaches his son, and he says, قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى. But oh my son, I see in a dream that I am slaughtering you. What do you have to say? What is your take on it? This dialogue wasn't to see whether or not to fulfill the command of Allah, but to test the faith and the iman of my son, Ismail alayhi salam. From here, there's another lesson for us to learn, and that is of father-son relations. That there needs to exist a strong and open relationship between father and son. Ismail alayhi salam responds to his father, and he says, قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. But oh my father, do as you have been commanded. And then he turns his attention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he says, Insha'Allah, with the aid and assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will find me to be from amongst the patient ones. The Mufassirin write that was it the blood of his father or the milk of his mother that enabled him to respond with such intelligence? Again, keeping in mind that he is around 7 years old. Then came the crucial moment. فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَا وَتَلَّهُ لِلْجَبِينِ. When they both, father and son, submitted to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Ibrahim alayhi salam lays his son down on his side ready for slaughter. So let us just pause here for a moment and try to take in and understand what was the emotions of the mother knowing that this is my only child, and keeping in mind that the bond that a mother has with her son, and the only child. What her emotion must have been when bidding her only child farewell, knowing that he's not to return. You know how special that when your child calls you by the title of mom, dad, mommy, ummi, abi, there's no more. What the emotions of the father must have been when walking his son to the place of slaughter, not engaged in a casual conversation. Dad, who's going to be holding the horns? Who's slaughtering? Who's holding the front legs? But it's a walk of silence, knowing that I'm going to sacrifice my own son. Do we feel the emotions of the parents? This was total submission by an entire family to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ibrahim alayhi salam lays his son down, and then Ismail alayhi salam makes his final request to his father. And he says, oh my father, make sure your knife is sharp. It must not happen that because of a blunt knife you delay in fulfilling the commands of Allah. Oh my father, if you deem appropriate, cover my eyes. It must not happen that when my eyes meet with your eyes, your fatherly love overpowers you and you delay in fulfilling the commands of Allah. "Oh my father, after my demise, take my garment and go and give it to my mother. Perhaps it will be a means of consolement and comfort to her. But make sure no blood stains my garment, because I do not want to aggravate the pain of my mother after my demise." If we have to ponder over these last few requests, there is so much of lesson we can take from here. Ibrahim alayhi salam is reduced to tears, and he tells his son that what a wonderful assistant you have been to me in fulfilling the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We reflect how many of us can say that we are that child of our parents, we are that son, that daughter who can say that, or my parents can say for me that what a wonderful assistant my child has been to me in fulfilling the commands of Allah. How many of us can say that about our sons, that what a wonderful assistant my son has been to me in fulfilling the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Then with all his force, Ibrahim alayhi salam tries to slaughter his son, but by the decree of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevented that knife from cutting and sent Jibreel alayhi salam down with a ram from Jannah. In Tafsir of Jalalain it is written that this animal that was brought down from Jannah is that very animal that was offered by Habil, the son of Adam alayhi salam, as his sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, my brothers and elders, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not asking us to sacrifice any of our children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not asking us to sacrifice anyone who is beloved to us. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to sacrifice the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we can gain closeness and proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we mentioned in the starting, that is the essence of Qurbani, to draw close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my beloved brothers, let us make a firm intention today that when I'm putting that animal down for sacrifice, I ask myself, what is my Ismail? Who is my Ismail? What is it in my life that needs to sacrifice, that I need to sacrifice to draw the pleasure and the happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we make one resolution today, that I'm going to pick out one sin from my life, and I'm going to today sacrifice it for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhiru da'wana, and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.